and then you have those of us who are in between that we just want the best person. We don't care if you're
Right.
red or blue. We just care that you care about this state or this city, whichever position we're, appointing you to.
Mhm.
So when it comes to abortion, I feel that when it says our inalienable God given rights means that that is your right to stand before God for whatever choice you make personally. I feel as far as the racism in this country is pretty much more of let's stop promoting it and keep on talking about it and start creating and raising children who open their mouth and say something and be like, no, we don't tolerate that.
Are you feeling stuck, lost, tired, or uninspired? We've all been there, including myself. I'm Coach Des, mindset motivator and lifestyle entrepreneur. I'm here to tell you that the best, unapologetic, and limitless version of yourself is yet to come. The Born Unbreakable podcast is here to inspire just that. With motivating guests from all different walks of life and around the world, their stories will empower you to unlock abundance and your unbreakable spirit. Do you need accountability? Reach out to me for a free consultation of how I can support you in reaching your maximum potential. Hey everyone, it's Coach Des here with an announcement about my Born a Boss Babe 90-day transformational program for 18 to 24-year-old women who are looking to build their confidence, their courage, and their compassion in the world. So if that's you or someone you know, reach out to me at des@bornunbreakable.com. Listen, when we think about people like Oprah Winfrey or LeBron James, what separates them from others is the coaching, the mentorship, the investment that they make in themselves to be great. What if you could supercharge your life at 20 years old so that when you're 30 and 40, you're that much further? When I was that age, college was an incredible foundation for me. But one of the things that was missing is that community that could help me grow and think more intentionally about things like relationships, finance, health, mental wellness. All of those things are important in accelerating how we show up in the world and the impact that we have. If you're ready to supercharge your life, it's time to reach out to me so we can do it together. The program launches in August. I'm so excited and I can't wait to see you there. Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast. I'm your host, Coach Des. I am thrilled about the guest that I have today. EL'ona Kearney is on the show. She has an amazing story and she is running for governor in 2024 for the state of Washington. So I majored in politics when I was in college, and I have a love-hate relationship with it because there's a lot of things that I think need improvement in our world, and I get, as frustrating as the subject may be, and I know for many people who are listening, regardless of, what side of the spectrum you're on and what you believe in, it's often a divisive thing in our country and actually across the world. It's not just unique to the United States of America. So when I see a bright spot like EL'ona and learning about what she stands for, she's not a career politician. She's single motherhood, 2 children. She's a veteran for this country, which I have so much admiration and respect for, growing up in an Army family. And I think that she is the epitome of the future, meaning that there are people who are good people who are contributors to our society that want to do more in this political space and break the norm of just, all the people who have just done politics their whole life. So this for me was a bright spot to learn about her and what she stands for, which we'll get into. And she's been through things personally in her life. And I think that has demonstrated her grit, her resilience, and I'm just excited to have you here. Thank you for coming on the show, EL'ona.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here as well.
But well, before I start just, hey, let's talk about politics, I think we've got to ease our way into it. But I'd love for you to start with your story, your personal story. I know that you're a veteran. I know that you're a mom. You know, tell me about you.
Okay. Well, even best way to start telling you about me is talk about my journey to the military. Most people when they join the military, it's for they want a career or they want free college. And that's like the normal statement that you hear of why did you join the military? And mine's was different. I joined the military to actually commit suicide. Growing up, I was suicidal. I can't tell you really much of what my triggers were. At that time, I just knew when I was young, I think of my first memory would always be when I was 3 years old. My mom and dad were arguing. And while they were arguing, they jumped up and just like in each other's face. So would run into the closet and beat myself in the head with a shoe, with my mom's high heel shoes, or take her makeup and just scribble on my face and tell myself that I hate myself, that it's my fault that they're arguing. And, parents don't really realize that their kid's perception is not what they think that their child's perception is of a situation. And when you're arguing or having spousal disagreements, even if you're a happy couple, it's always good to try to see where that child's thinking is or where that child mindset is of what they perceived of the situation or what they perceive of themselves in the situation. Because children are learning, that's their foundation of where their morals and their perceptions start at. So growing up, anytime something would go wrong, I just carried that I had to be perfect. And my parents didn't know this because I would always silently do these things. I would go cut myself if I got a B on my test or my schoolwork. My parents was like, "Oh, this is good. This is good." And but to me, a B wasn't good. I felt like I was not good enough. And so I ended up in hospital for suicide and depression. And my thing, like prior to that, was always because I grew up my mom was a pastor, so I grew up in a church. So she didn't know her own child was suffering because I was just trying to be so perfect and trying to make her proud of me and anything. Oh, and don't say, let my mom say, I'm disappointed in you. My whole world would crumble.
Oh,
And it's like, I felt like I was unredeemable. I was going to hell no matter what. And then I started getting to the point where I just hated God. Like, God, why would you let me suffer like this? That maybe you just have it out for me that I'm just destined for hell. And so I just had all of these things going on that I was suffering by myself. And then it was when they started finding out that I was suicidal and ended up in and out of the hospital for suicide and depression. It wasn't that support that I needed. It was more of you're not supposed to be doing this. You know that people who commit suicide are going to hell. It was more of a my mom being a pastor rather than a parent, and she, in her mind, she didn't realize that's what she was doing. But and then it was people coming in and giving those sermons of, if you're suicidal people just want attention, get over it, just get over it. And so then I was like, what is wrong with me that I can't get over it? Every day I try. And people don't understand that it's not just as simple as getting over. There's some people that they can wake up and flip the switch and now they are healed and walking. But then there's others like myself that it's like a daily, pattern of trying to change that habit, negative, toxic, habitual thinking. And
yeah.
when I turned 18, I was like, I'm just going to get out of this because every time I try attempt to commit suicide, I'm not successful. So if I go in, I'm around guns, I can just shoot myself. And but the thing is, like the first 2 weeks of Hell Week, I forgot all about trying to commit suicide. And you're not around guns the first 2 weeks of Hell Week. They're breaking down what they break you down to build you back up. So they break down everything, like your way of thinking, because when you're in the military, you have to think a different way. You have to think as a soldier. You have to think as a unit, not as an individual. So they're tearing down whatever your upbringing, all of that. They call it brainwashing. They call it so they brainwash you of everything that you know, which is why they take away your regular clothes, your personal things, and they give you this military uniform because we're all one, we're all a unit. So in that time period, my mindset was being broken down and brainwashed from suicidalness. It didn't take away all of it at that time, but it was just, taking me away from thinking that I'm not worth anything, I can't fight, I can't do this, to being a fighter at the time. And so when as time went along, I still had those suicidal thoughts and whatnot, but it wasn't to the level of what I was when I first went into the military. But I got out. I was supposed to stay in there for 8 years, but I was in there for 2.5 years because when I was pregnant at the time, what the rule was, and I see they've changed the rules now, is you have to sign custody. If you're a single parent, you have to sign custody of your child over to a family member, and they call it a parent plan. And I refused to fill out the parent plan because I didn't want to have a kid, and then I now have to be separated and be sent overseas. I think I was allowed to stay with my child for 6 months. So I took the pregnancy chapter and got out. And when I got out, at first in my head, I was like, I had these suicidal thoughts of myself of I still want to die. Now I have nothing because the military was a job. Now I'm out of the military. I don't have a job. I don't have a way to take care of my kids. And what am I going to do? So I was suicidal and I said, well, I don't want to kill my kids, but I want to die, but I don't want them to live here and ever go through the things that I went through. And I don't want anybody else to raise them because nobody else is going to take care of them to spare them from experiencing what I had. And so it's like now I have to just live and live for them. And also, like when I was growing up, because back then it was, we was raised up with spankings and things. So those spankings never, they never taught me discipline. It just only validated my perception that I was not good enough. So I did not want that for my kids. And so I started doing this thing, like with my kids, I would pray to God. And when I prayed to God, I would tell them, I pray that, you're spared from hell. You're going to go to heaven. And then at the end, I would say, God, if my, if my kids are destined for hell, that I be the one to go to hell for them, that I take on all their sins, kind of thing. And then one day my kids were like, but mom, we don't want you to go to hell. Why can't God just let us all go to heaven and things? And so it's like eventually doing that on a consistent basis, even though I was doing it for them at the time, I started realizing that I didn't have any more suicidal thoughts. Whenever it came to something that would make me feel suicidal, it was like, I'm not suicidal right now. I feel like fighting, taking up for this, standing up for myself, speaking up for myself. And then I came across the to something I was listening to, well, a person that was talking to me, and he actually was a Muslim friend of mine, and he was saying, forgiveness is really not the forgive and forget. It's like learning to set boundaries. And so I was like, oh, you're right. So then I started teaching my kids. I said, when you forgive someone, it's kind of like this. I buy this house with this paint on the wall. I don't like that paint. It's an ugly color. Now I have to accept that paint is there because I can't do anything about it. But if I don't approve of the paint, I change it. If I approve of it, then I just let it go on and on. So then I started applying that to my life. When people were, I started losing friends, and at first I was scared to lose friends. I didn't want to be alone. But
Mhm.
I realized that if they respect me and they are true friends to me, they
Mhm.
will respect my boundaries. I don't like this. Like, I would have friends that they think because I was homeschooling my kids. Oh, hey, can you run go do this errand for me? I don't have time. Can you do this? Can you pick up my kids? And I was like, I'm doing everybody else's responsibility, and they have no respect that I have kids of my own, and I have
Mhm.
responsibilities of my own, that they think that it's okay to do that. And so then it was like, no, I can't do this. No, I won't. I do. My homeschooling time is dedicated to teaching my kids. Your kids are in school getting their education. Mine has a right to get theirs, and it's from me, you know? And when I started setting boundaries of not letting people take advantage of my time. And then my other pet peeve was the being late. And I'm always on time. Me, I try to be earlier, but it's when people be late and then they'll be a whole hour late. And then it'll be, oh, can I cancel? And I'm like, I could have done something within that whole hour. Then I said, okay, you know what?
Mhm.
That's me allowing them to do that to me. I'm approving that. So then I just
Mhm.
started setting boundaries. Okay, well, it's 10 minutes after, I'm going to go ahead and leave. We can reschedule another time. And some people I just don't reschedule with, because I know that that's their pattern of doing that. And I'm like, no, I deserve for my time to be respected. Even if I didn't have anything planned after you, that's still my right and my time. So once I started learning to set those boundaries with people and family, then I noticed that people at first stopped being my friends. That's fine. And then there's other people who stopped for a little bit, but then they started coming around. But everybody respects that, they know that's me. They'll be like, oh, that's just EL'ona, you know? So
Yeah.
so that's pretty much me. So then I just start being with people. I feel like I see people for who they are. And there are people
Mhm.
that if they constantly disrespect those boundaries, even after you said no and you've given them consequences, I I take it as, okay, that person just pure evil. But then, you know, but there are people who they either respect those boundaries or they go their separate ways, because I understand too. Sometimes we're just not meant to be. We have different personalities, and our personalities just don't mesh. But I do know how to be cordial and in the same room and greet whenever I, come, in the same present. I'm not gonna be like, nasty or anything. But
Right.
so I learned to see those different things in people. So
Yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's how I
That's
started becoming forgiveness coach.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fascinating because there's so much of the human experience that we struggle with. And the fact that you're able to be so vulnerable to talk about that is important because it's allowing that platform to say not not everything is perfect,
Yes,
and for you to have struggled for all of those years with suicide and be able to have a turning point. It's funny. As you were talking, I was thinking of a friend. His name's Sylvester, and he was in the military too. And he wrote a book called "Winning the Battle Within."
yeah,
And I think that's such a. I was thinking of that because you were going through that experience. You were winning the battle that you had within yourself,
yeah,
and then you thought about what does that mean for these lives that I'm now responsible for raising,
yeah,
with your children. And so sometimes it takes a lot of work and a lot of grit to get into a different headspace
yeah,
and get influences that start to shift, and you took your power back because for what you described, feeling almost powerless to the point where you didn't want your life, to being able to turn around and go, I do matter, I am enough, and I'm going to set boundaries.
yes,
And I'm going to set boundaries, and I'm not going to let people um, have that kind of control.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. And so so you spent time in the military, and so fast forward a little bit. What was the inspiration, or at what point did you decide running for office? That is something that I want to do. What was that epiphany for you?
For me, it was, you know, I I'll back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So when I was homeschooling my kids,
Mhm.
I started doing I created a program in Florida called Citrus County Community Alliance. And what this program was, I called it I'm making I'm possible or impossible I'm possible. So it
Wow.
was basically to not complain about injustice, social injustice, but to find ways to create justice, be a solver of a problem and not the complainer, because we
Mhm.
all look for somebody else to solve the problem. But guess what? Nobody ever wants to step up the plate to be the one to
Mhm.
solve the problem, because with that comes also the burden of people complaining about you not doing it good enough or you not doing it right. And when all it is I'm one of you who are trying to solve the
Mhm.
problem, and you just guys are just complaining about somebody need to step up and do it.
Right.
And so it was really for the youth, but it ended up being youth and parents, because parents enjoyed doing, participating as well. And what I did was, there was this state representative at the time. His name was Jimmy T. Smith. He let my kids and some of the other kids come in and intern for him, and he would come out to the program and he would teach us how to write legislative bills. And he would tell us, if you want a legislative bill to be passed, the best way to convince them is to go find another bill, whether it's in this state or another state, but preferably this state, that works, that you see is making progress. And then you take the language from that bill, but you apply it to what it is that you are wanting to do. And then you say, hey, it's working for this bill. So I was thinking, if you do this, but apply it to this, and this, and then he also taught us about, how to present it before legislation, how the whole process goes. And then he would give them, tasks of coming up with something that they wanted changing. And I
Mhm.
think the girls came up with, they think that maxi pads and, feminine hygiene should be included in medical insurance. so so
That's great.
he would
That would save a lot of money.
right. So he would sit there and he would, like, not so much as debate them on it, like go back. He would just tell him about the different groups that would come up and just disagree with them. And this group would say, well, this is not fair, because then men feel like this, and this. So how are you going to make this feel like an equal right? So he was pretty much giving them the experience of what it takes to be in leadership, like state representative, the president, and things that they don't have an easy task, because they're not just thinking about it's, they want you to have what it is that you have, but they also have to make sure that whatever they give you is considered equal rights to everyone, and that it's not infringing on somebody else, or it's not taking away from somebody else's, right to have something else. So
Mhm.
that was my first experience with that, was doing that with my kids. And as a homeschool, I did that as American government for them. And
Yeah.
then when I moved here to Washington State, I started after my kids graduated from homeschool. I was like, okay, so what do I want to do? I don't have nothing to do with my life. So I was like, oh, I'll go back to school with my kids. So I went to college with my kids. And while I was in college, I took up extracurricular things like student government, student council, writing policies with the college president, and even going to Olympia, which is our capital, and lobbying there before Congress, requesting for funding for our school. And then when I went on to get my bachelor's at another college, which is the Evergreen State College, there I won an internship to intern with Congress for student veterans. And I created
Mm.
a policy. I presented it, and right now I have two congressmen congresswoman and congressman who are working on it to turn it into a bill. And so I started, you know, everybody was having all these complaints. Our governor is making these emergency orders. Nobody in this state likes the governor. And of course, I know there are going to be other people, other career politicians who run for governor because they know at this time nobody likes the governor. But every election, we all complain. There's nobody we feel like we trust. We feel like we're stuck with who they give us, like the two parties give us to run. So then I was like, well, at first I was like, no, I should I run or shouldn't I run? So then I started asking about it, and like I'm the type of person I'll go to different things just to see if they are what the news say. Like if they're saying this Black Lives Matter protest down here is horrible, or these Proud Boys over here are horrible, I actually get out and I go and I talk to both sides, and I find that both of them actually have the same concern, but they have different ways of going about it. And then
Yeah.
they're attacking each other unnecessarily rather than talking to each other. And I'm like,
Mhm.
how do we mend this? Because the news is going to play this for this side and this for this side. And really,
Mhm.
when I speak to them and when I go to the actual protest that they have, it's not
Mhm.
what the media is actually showing is going on. And so I said, I asked a couple of politicians, I said, how do I run for governor? And their whole thing was like, oh, get out here and help me door knock and do this and start at the bottom. So I went and I ran for city council last year,
Mhm. Mhm.
Tech City Council. And when I ran, I actually had a torn meniscus in my knee, so I couldn't walk in doorbell. So I just created a website, and then I created meet and greets for people to come out and meet me. And
Mhm.
the career politicians decided that every time I created a meet and greet, they were going to create a last minute meet and greet and tell people not to come to mine. It was more important to come to theirs. So
Wow.
at first, I was like in my head, I'm probably only going to have 14 votes. So I didn't watch the the news as it was, during the counting. And I was getting some last minute emails of people saying, I'm reading your page. I have this question. So as people would ask me questions, I would update my page with answers. So
Mhm.
and then somebody called me and they said, do you know that you just came in third place? You got a lot of votes. I was only expecting 14 people I knew.
You were like, I got my friends, a couple of family members.
And it was so funny. So I turned it on and I looked and I said, oh, I was like barely behind the incumbents. And
Wow.
so when I saw that I could do that, and that was with just $20 in my campaign and a website that I created, I was like,
Mhm.
man, if people really knew who I was, imagine how many more votes I could have gotten. So
Mhm.
that was the primary. So the general, mind you, I always go meet everybody. So even when I was running, I went and I met all the candidates that I was running against. And
Mhm.
so one of the people that I was running against, I told, I went out to his holding signs on the corner, and I said, if I'm going to give my vote to someone else, I'd rather give it to you because I feel that you're genuine and you're looking at what the community needs and not as to if you're better than me or not, because that's not why I'm out here. I'm not out here to say, like I know people are gonna say, "Why are you better than the next the other person?" But
Mhm.
sometimes you might still have better ideas that that might be better suit for this. So I would like to know if I lose, who I'm gonna vote for. And I said you would be someone that I will vote for, but I'm still running, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when I lost, I went out and I held his signs, the my opponents that I believed in signs, and so the people that the incumbents thought that they were going to win because they've always been a shoe in, but when they saw me holding the sign, everyone who voted for me decided to vote for them because it was like if she felt like it was good enough to vote for them. And then I also
Mhm.
ended up getting emails saying, had I known that you was this type of person, I my vote would have went to you. You know, I'm sorry because the incumbent said this about you. Like they were mudslinging me, but
Yep.
I didn't, I wasn't going back and forth with the mudslinger. I was just staying in my own lane.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so when I turned around again, I said, how do I run for governor? And everybody said, just start from the bottom and work your way up. And so then I told them, I said, for some reason, you guys think that I'm asking your permission to have a seat at the table. I'm not asking anybody's permission to have a seat at the table. I've already looked it up to run for governor. All I need, my credentials that I need are to be 18 and older. What is this? Be a registered voter and
Mhm.
reside where I want to run. So I went ahead and signed up to run for governor. So is anybody going to help me run? So when I was doing that, I had like friends, like I have friends from both parties, Republican and Democrat. And everybody
Mhm.
was sitting at the table. It's like, well, what party do you run as? Because I'm more of a, I would say I'm more of a purple voter, which is
Yeah.
whoever I see, I go out and I meet people and things. So I don't really acclaim either side
Yep.
much and things. In times past, there have been times I would claim more Republican, but in this state, it's like Republicans are kind of disappointing as far as they feel like, well, both sides have this tendency of what you call the far right and far left, where
Yeah.
we want it all red, we want it all blue, and then you have those of us who are in between that we just want the best person. We don't care if
Right.
you're red or blue. We just care that you care about this state or this city, whichever position we're appointing you to.
Mhm. Right.
And so everyone who was sitting there helping me said, we just rather vote Democrat because like that's even the Republicans, because the Republicans, like they were fed up with even like some of the dismissiveness that was
Mhm.
going on here. And when I say Republicans, I'm talking about the party itself,
Yep.
not the people, because people
Mhm.
tend to judge the people who are Republicans as the party Republican. And
Right.
the leadership is what's making the people look bad that are just regular people who have regular concerns, just like their fellow,
Mhm.
Democrat, independent, green voters, all of these, we all have the
Yep.
same, and we're getting lost in the mix because of these far views that are not representing caring about just the people, period.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying this because the, before we started this interview, I talked about the divisiveness that is portrayed so much in this country about choosing a side and feeling like it's this or that, it's black or white.
Yeah.
And what you're highlighting, which I think is really critical for people to recognize, is that this gradient, there's a gray space. There is this gray space. It's not all, extreme to the right or extreme to the left, but if the media doesn't play to that, then it's not as provocative. It's not as dramatic.
Right.
And people want the dramatics because guess what? Then you're not focused. You're only paying attention to that, and you're not looking at other things like the economy and, the things that we could be doing to contribute for good because we're so focused on the drama. Um, and I like the fact that you talk about the process of you don't just go this party or that party. You sit there and you have conversations and engage to make an informed decision about what would be best. And I've been talking to more people, and it's this notion of doing things consciously,
Yes.
not just on autopilot, not just because other people say this is what you should do, but it's thoughtfully
Yeah.
with engagement, with insights.
Yeah.
And that's such an important, this is the part of politics
Yes.
people do not see,
Yeah.
right? Because most of what we see, the majority of what we see is that person who's been in office for 20, 30, a long time. This is just their whole life. And it's everyday people who have gone through real challenges of what you've just, spent
Yes.
a good amount of time talking through, that is out there really wanting to do good. And you've done it in a very grassroots way. It wasn't from your couch watching TV, just reading about something. It was going out, talking to people, having engagement, forming opinions, and being active. And I think that's the democratic process.
Yeah.
That's civic responsibility. That's being somebody who what they say aligns with what they do. And I think that's what gives politics such a bad name, is because there's so much of this talk and there's not the action.
Yeah.
And so, it's very refreshing, to hear you talk about this. But I do, I do, I would be remiss if I didn't kind of talk about current events, right? So, when I looked at the state of Washington website, one of the news pieces says West Coast states launch new multi-state commitment to reproductive freedom, standing united on protecting abortion access in the face of the U.S. Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade. So this is California, Oregon, and Washington will continue to be a safe haven for all people seeking abortions and other reproductive health services in these states. What is your feeling about that?
Well, I know because I see people posting things about they're coming after you not being able to have an IUD or Plan B and things. And I don't think that people realize the federal and the state are two different things. So,
Mhm,
federal, that is just pretty much a what is it? Just like a base guideline of how of the expectation, but the states still have a right to make their own laws when it comes to abortion. So like if
mhm,
I was in a place like Florida, we already know Florida is gonna, do away with it because the majority of their voters are anti-abortion. But
mhm,
if you're in a state like Washington here, Washington is not an anti-abortion state. Washington, the
mhm,
majority of your voters want their rights to have abortion. As far as like abortion, when it comes to me, like for myself personally, I don't do abortion, but that's my choice and my right
mhm,
personally. When it comes to and as far as what do you say, my belief in whether it's religion or anything, people have to also understand that the law is not a religious law because when they came, who do you say, the pilgrims and those and all of them came here, they came here for religious freedom, which means that they don't have a right to say that if you're Muslim, if you're Satan worship, whatever it is, they, whatever your religious belief is, they can't infringe on that, is what they came. So to make a law that is a religious, let's say, a moral justice as opposed
mm,
to a constitutional justice would not be my place because I'm not coming in to say I'm running for governor because I'm going to push Christianity or whatever religion. And I personally don't even aspire to, a religion myself, but I'm not coming to push anybody's religious
mhm,
justice on anyone. So when it comes to abortion, I feel that when it says our inalienable God given rights means that that is your right to stand before God for whatever choice you make personally. So I'm not accountable for if you believe in God or not believe in God, but I'm not accountable for who you stand for on that day for the choices that you made on this in this lifetime. So it's
mhm,
your right, your inalienable right to make those choices equally, just like it is for everyone else.
mhm.
And um, to what is it? Life, freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So it is that
Right.
person's right. It is that woman's right. I don't have a right to stand in between that. So when I'm governor, I'm not coming in between a person's constitutional right with a moral justice. I'm going to let that moral justice be what it is. As far as the as far as when it comes to, like, because some people say, oh, first trimester, second trimester type things. I feel that's where our our system of Senate and the House of Representatives, where they come in and they define what is what. But I do believe that once a baby is here in this life, has made it out of the womb, that this
Mhm.
baby now has an inalienable right, because that's just like a, let's say an illegal immigrant makes, what do they say, once they set foot on American soil, they
Mhm.
automatically become a citizen. This baby has made it on American soil, it's become a citizen. But prior to that, I feel that's where the state of Washington's, our legal system sets the
Mhm.
rules of then what, how far does that go. But as far as the Roe versus Wade, as far as Supreme Court, I feel that was more made on a moral moral justice as opposed to
Mm.
our constitutional justice.
Constitutional. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and these are the things that people are grappling with, you know. I mean, this is current events, this is current news, heightened emotions. But I like you said, there's complaining, which is really easy to do.
Yeah,
We can just call up anybody we want and complain, but then there's action.
yeah.
Then there's action. And that's when you understand the law, understand what it means in the federal government, what does it mean at the state level, and what action can you take that is going to help and not hinder. Um, but I appreciate you kind of walking through that. What about racism in America? You know, it's been a very interesting last couple of years. There hasn't been a month lately where there's a shooting. We've seen it in Texas. We've seen it in other states. Uh, it it seems to be something that is pervasive and and not just in one part of the country. You know, we've seen this pop up in many places, and there are documentaries and data and statistics that show us every day that racism is alive and well in this country, despite civil rights, despite the good fight that's happened. What are your comments about racism in our country?
Um, well, when it comes to racism, like you said, I know that it's there. And for me, it's kind of like, when you're parenting your kid and you have the bad kid that's always getting in, and I hate using the word bad because nobody's really bad or good, but the kid that's always getting
The
in
naughty one.
right, that one that's always getting in trouble, and then you have this good kid over here. And it was like that for me growing up too. And my sister would always get in trouble, get suspended, so she's always getting, whether it's spanked, yelled at. My mom has to go here, go there, come to the principal's office, come to the store because she may have taken some from the store, different things.
Mhm.
And as the good child, I felt like there's no reward in being good. Like, I'm being good for what? And so if we're constantly focusing on the the bad child constantly, and I'm not saying you don't ever focus on the bad child or address it and things, but finding different ways to address it rather than making them feel like they're always getting a praise, and the good child is never getting attention. Because what I've seen when everything was going on, all the protests and stuff, that there were white people that were that they didn't turn hateful towards black people, but they were out there protesting with Black Lives Matter. And then all they
Mhm.
said was like, one lady, she said, I told her, I said, I relate to how you feel because I went to such and such, and I was kicked out. So I can understand. So that person was not saying anything to really try to downplay what the black person was going through. It was just to say
Mhm.
that I'm out here because I agree and I know how that feels, and you might be feeling it on 10 times level than what I experienced because you experience it all the time. But instead of the response being, you know, thank you for being out here, it was everybody jumped and attacked that one white person. So now you just make this person who was an ally not know where they stand. They know that there's racism. Now they're pushed to the other side of, well, all lives matter now because you just, you know, felt like it was okay to jump me. And so it's the, you know, like I do this, then you do that. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to hit you back, as opposed to there are people in these other sides that do understand and do relate, but they're there because now they've been hurt and mistreated by other people's anger and hurt. And I feel, what I feel is media and politics especially, I'm especially pissed off at politicians for it, which is they take an open wound, which is they know that there is a history that still hurts the black community, and they play on it. And they're not doing it because they're exposing racism. They're doing it for political votes. They're not doing it because they care to heal. Because if they care to heal, stop coming and dropping bombs in our community for a vote to get us to fight each other, as opposed to, okay, like one instance is, if if a black person voted for Trump, their Uncle Tom. If a black person voted for Biden, their Uncle Tom. And then both sides played that and got, why? We already have enough in the black community to be angry with, light, dark, you're skinny, fat. We fight amongst each other about these things, and now you want to fight us to fight each other about who voted for who, when there we go again, our inalienable right to vote for whoever we thought was best, and now we have a new person and let's keep moving it on. But we don't get that. We get the and to me, the politicians are promoting racism, and they are the biggest racists because they jab at our open wounds. Whereas let's find ways to help the community heal. Nobody has presented how can we help the community heal. And like I say, I'm not saying forget that racists are there, because they're going to be there no matter what. To the end of time, you're still going to have somebody that's racist. You can never have a perfect utopia. But what you can do is realize that we have come from slavery. Then we moved on to desegregation, which my mom was a child. So let's not say that's so long ago, because my mom experienced that. But now we're here to a place in time where we're not segregated. We're not slaves. Yes, we're still being mistreated. However, what we should recognize is what has gotten us here is people opening their mouths and saying something, people doing something about it, and not having a silent, you know, just saying, oh, okay, well, this happening to her, it's not happening to me, let me keep on going. Oh yeah, in the boardroom, I heard they're not going to hire her because she's black and things, and I got a job, you know. So open your mouth and say something, report it. So coming up with these things, in which I see that they are starting to do, is having these programs where they go in and with inclusivity programs. And Microsoft, I know they have one where they have training of being inclusive. And it's example, my daughter, she was, when she was 16 and we first moved here to Washington State, she was in the gas station. She had her license. She got to go drive around by herself. She was in the gas station. A black guy was paying and he left out the door. Soon as he left, there was two white women in front of her, and the cashier, he was white. The lady in front of her, an elderly lady, turned around. She said, I wish you N-words would go back to your country, you know, and just going in and you bring in crime, blah, blah. So my daughter, in her thinking, is this is my elder. I'm not going to disrespect her. So her mouth was open. She was hurt, and she walked out the store. And when I wrote about it on the community page, I said, look, I don't like what she said, but my problem was not her. My issue was the other white people standing in there. My issue is that you should have said something. Hey, we're not having that here. Maybe you should go buy your gas someplace else. They should have said something, because she only felt comfortable to do it because she was amongst her people who looked like her. And for me, silence is approval. So when you don't say anything, you stood there and approve, and everybody said, "Oh no, we don't approve of it." I said, "Then the next time you see something," I said, because if it was in a black community and a white child was being treated that way, I would have opened my mouth and say, hold on, you better go find her parents. You better go find, I would never let that happen to someone that's around me that's being the underdog of being mistreated. I open my mouth and say something. And
Mhm.
so that's pretty much where we are at this time, is pretty much teaching people to open your mouth and say something. If you're not with it, it's no longer this silent approval, or it didn't come up to me later and say, "Oh yeah, I thought that was wrong." If you thought it was wrong, you should have opened your mouth and said something. So
Right.
that's where
Yeah.
I feel, as far as the racism in this country is pretty much more of, let's stop promoting it and keep on talking about it, and start creating and raising children who open their mouth and say something and be like, no, we don't tolerate that. Because that's the only way
Mhm.
we move forward. That's the only way we've moved forward in the past. Because just because they created, what is it? They abolished slavery. Guess what? They were still doing slavery. You know why? Because nobody was opening their mouth and saying something until people started enforcing and opening their mouth and saying, what is desegregation. There was still there was still segregation for a little bit, but it didn't change until somebody started opening their mouth and saying something. See something, say something. And so
That's
now
right.
where we are is just really focusing on see something, say something, and our politicians aren't doing see something, say something. They're saying, "Oh, your fellow black person is racist if they don't vote for this person. Your fellow black person is racist if they don't believe in fried chicken and you believe in baked chicken." That's what they're doing to
Right.
us right now.
Yep.
And that's what I'm sick and tired of. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm running, is stop poking wounds at our community, stop dropping bombs in our community, and start to help us heal.
Yes. Yes. That is so vital. Healing instead of hating. I mean, it seems like a simple concept, yet, like you said, it's promoted on in the media and in the news in a way that is unhealthy. Elona, if there was, one other topic in in the world right now that you are impassioned by, that you want people to know about, what would that be?
Well, it's pretty much what I always talking about, is forgiveness. And
Yeah.
I think that people always think that when they forgive someone, that it it takes away, I guess you say, that pain or that residue or even that past. And like we were talking about, the racism and the history of
Mhm.
this country, we have to accept that. We can't change that. But what we don't have to do is, we don't have to approve of it. We don't have to approve of how someone treats us. And when we learn to how to set boundaries with people, and set boundaries even in our politics, when we set those boundaries, we start to be able to move on. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens with us realizing that there is a problem. And granted, people, we want, I used to always hate hearing, forgiveness is not for them, it's for yourself. And I'm like, no, I want them to change. We can't change a person who is racist. And the ones that you can, you're not going to be able to change them by being hateful or by attacking them or talking at them. Nobody likes to be attacked. Nobody likes to be talked at. You could be wrong and somebody tells you that you're wrong, but it's in the way that you tell them, in the way that you come at them. And sometimes you can change a person by action, by showing that I'm not as nasty as you. They're good people. They're good black people out here that are respectful, that you can do business with, that you can like, that you can get along with. And a lot of people I've met, even on that community page, when I commented about my daughter and things, it was a guy, he inboxed me. He said, I used to be a leader of a KKK. He said, I'm not anymore. Because when his brother, he found out his brother was gay, and the person that he was in love with was a gay black man. He said,
Mm.
but he didn't want to lose his brother. And so for his brother, it was, you can't be around me. You can't have anything to do with my family if you're participating in this, and this. And he said it took him some time, but because him and his brother was close, and he saw that his brother's lover was a great person and all this other stuff, it changed his thinking, and now he's like the biggest advocator of the minority community and the LGBTQ plus community. So for people have, if we want change, we all have to start changing ourselves and our perception of others. Me, I don't go, I was always taught, go where you're celebrated and not where you're tolerated. So just start being around other people who celebrate you. If you have it, if you feel like, oh, all white people are bad, start finding some good white people to be around and start doing little things that you have in common with. And then that change will start to change your perception of not hating all white people, but being able to categorize this person, they need a little bit more work. I might have just planted a seed there. Somebody else gonna water it.
Right, I know, it takes time. It takes time for a plant to grow, but, my favorite thing about what you just said is around personal responsibility,
Yes,
because we are responsible for one person, and that's ourself.
yes,
You can't change this person next to you or across from you, but you can start with you.
yes,
And if you rise to the occasion, open your mind, reach your hand across, start to have a dialogue, that can have a ripple effect. That can have a ripple effect. So
yes,
when you start with that accountability for your own actions, that's what you can control,
yes.
you know? So I appreciate so much you saying that. I want to transition into a couple of questions that get to, people have learned so much about you, now and what you stand for. So these are just a couple more that I'll throw in, kind of shifting away from the spicy political topics. Um, so my first question for you is, what makes you unbreakable?
Whew, what makes me unbreakable? Well, I think what makes me unbreakable is, I go back to forgiveness. My motto is be a promotion of forgiveness and not the emotion of a traumatic past. So, like, whenever I write that in short, I just said be a promotion and not the emotion. So, I think that it is important that we, like if I'm watching a movie and let's say we see the bad person and we go
The
back,
villain.
yeah, and they see, they go back and they play something from their past or how they got there. Then we become more compassionate to that antagonist, and it's like, oh, if somebody would have done this, if somebody would have that, and then you see the pattern along the way where other people have contributed to that person being the damaged person that they are. We all play a role with each other. So
Yeah.
if we learn to be forgiving, and I know that there are some people that like say for instance, if a person was a thief, he's not coming out, like we give him second chances. He's not coming out and the government's not going to give him a job working at the bank, but he also has a second chance to do other things. We can allow people to do that. I call it, I tell my kids, I put people in boxes. If they violated some area that I know that they're not capable of restraining themselves from violating, then I put them in, hey, I know that I can do this with these type of things with this person, but we can't do these type of things. I know that like my mom and she's gonna talk about every single time you bring up like, oh mom, I'm hurting, I had a bad day, it's gonna become a sermon. So I have to say, mom, I don't need you to be a pastor right now. I need you to be my mom. And then if it's going to go into like something that I know is going to put her in pastor mode, then I change the subject and I stay on a level with my mom of things that I know she and I can talk about. We both love music because she's a musician, and we both like writing songs. So we do those things together. We don't do this over here where we know it's going to come
Right. Yeah.
to a head. So I that's pretty much what makes me unbreakable is I find things that are common between me and people, and I stayed there, and I hold that as valuable because I value people. And not
Mhm.
so much as I value their opinion, I do value people's opinion in the sense of things that we have in common. If it's something like
Mhm.
some area that they don't have an experience in and they're a naysayer, like I have some naysayers of, you want to run for governor? That's all the way at the top. And and then what if people do this? What if people say people, I already know that. Everybody knows that anybody running in politics is going to be attacked. They're going to go try and dig something up from your past and make it look, they're going to exaggerate it to make it look worse than what it is. They're going to take,
Mhm.
I know that. I don't need this person. So it's like, I know that person is a separate box. I don't talk about certain things with them, but they can help me over here. And I
Yeah.
think that's what makes me unbreakable, is that I find the good in people no matter
Yeah.
what.
And that common ground. Yeah, that's really powerful. Okay, what about a lighter question of what's something that's on your bucket list?
Hmm. Something that is on my bucket list. That's funny because I made this vision board, and on there is like, I wanted to write a book. So I wrote a book and I published it. And then I wanted to buy a house. I bought a house. So I just create these vision boards, and the only one on my bucket list I haven't achieved yet is being on Oprah.
Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one. There is still time. There is still time. Maybe it's when you're running.
Yes.
Like, hey,
Right.
let me get that platform right there. I love that. What about a self-limiting belief? What's a self-limiting belief that you've had to overcome?
A self-limiting belief. Um, Sometimes I do have that, I don't know if you would call it self-rejection, but sometimes where I still feel like I'm not enough.
Mhm.
And I think that that's something that really never goes away. I think in a sense of, like, people always think that being courageous is not having doubt, but being courageous is overcoming those doubts. Being strong and a hero is still overcoming self limiting belief or self rejection things. And
Mhm.
sometimes there is that, okay, how am, okay, so for where I am is, how am I going to become recognizable in this state against other politicians who are already, who have what, 3 million and more in their account, to just, they don't have to go out and meet people. They're having to, they're having people knock on doors for them. They're paying for TV commercials. I don't have
Mhm.
none in that. And so sometimes is like, how am I going to fight Goliath in this situation?
Yeah.
How am I going to do this? But when I come across those thoughts, and thankfully I have people also, like I say, those boxes, the people who are not the naysayers in my life, and they all are like, they're with me. I think they just really more take my lead, because I say, you know, my biggest uphill battle is recognition right now. And I know I'm going out here and I'm knocking on doors, and some days it feels like pointless, and some days it feels like I'm not making any headway. And then I'll tell them, I said, but it doesn't matter, at least we know we tried. I go into like commander mode of, because what we're gonna do is, and this is the
Yes.
strategy. And so I go into that of, I have to fight those not enough or not good enough moments,
Mhm.
because they come with, I think they come with any challenge of you stepping out of your comfort zone, or you're going into a place that you've never been, because now it becomes the unknown. So
Mhm. It's the new territory.
yes.
That's right. I love that. Well, okay, what about a superpower? What is something that you're really good at that you're proud of?
I'm good at, actually, I am a resourceful person. So just like when I was trying to find out how to run for governor and nobody would help me, nobody would tell me, I'm the type of person, I'm going to go look it up. And then I made calls around. There's like a thing called PDC filing that you have to do. in order to
Mhm.
file to be able to fundraise. I was on the phone for like 2 weeks with the PDC filing, and they were so nice. They were so nice. They was like,
They were
"Don't
like,
worry about
"He is persistent."
it." Right? And they're like, "Don't worry about it. That's okay. Call as much as you want. We're here to help." So and things, and make sure you be able to file correctly with IRS and all this other stuff. So I was every single day for 2 weeks, like literally every single day. I would be on there for like an hour, then I hang up, do something else, and I
You're
come back.
washing dishes on the phone,
Yeah,
multitasking on the phone.
yeah,
That's perseverance for sure. Oh my
yes.
gosh, what a process. What a process. Okay, Elona, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to anybody listening, what would it be?
One piece of advice I would give is whatever your dream is, don't think that you're not good enough for it. And sometimes even when you're in that stage where you're just struggling to try to find out how to get there, and nothing is, whether it's your Google research is not popping up anything, or library research, or people around you, you don't have access to the people. I find that as long as you keep on going, and sometimes if you just do it, and a lot of us are afraid to do it because we're afraid of the failure part. But stop seeing failure as failure, because it's not failure unless you give up. But see failure as a small win, because you're learning things in that moment. So if there's not a book or something that you found, you'll be able to write that book on how to get to where it is that you tried to get. But don't ever say that you can't or you're not enough. Just do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Elona, where can people find you? Where can they continue to follow the journey of your campaign to running for governor, Democratic governor in Washington in 2024?
They can find me. It's actually my name. My website is EL'onaKearney.com. And I'm the same on Facebook. Was it Facebook.com// EL'oنا Kearney.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes so people can click directly if they want to learn more about you. But I appreciate you coming on the show and just having so much enthusiasm, positive energy, and a genuineness to make a difference. I'm really excited
Thank you.
for this journey for you. It's amazing to see it unfold and for you to have this commitment to connect with people in such a proactive way before this campaign.
Yes, thank you.
Wow. That was the first time that I've ever really delved into politics on this show. And what was so refreshing about it was it was probably the most bipartisan experience because Elona comes from a place of a few things. Number one, heart. Just as a human being, somebody who has gone through real issues and has worked through those issues very personally and now publicly, but has spent so much time not focused on the party politics because she has been on both sides, being a Republican and a Democrat in her lifetime, and focuses on the issues and the people. Fancy that, right? That's not generally the place that we start from. If you grow up in a Republican household, the likelihood of you being a Republican is pretty high, and vice versa, Democrat or otherwise. And I think it's very important for us to understand that, as she pointed out, the issues that people are talking about are the same ones. They're coming at it from different angles. And when you open yourself up to awareness and understanding and having a conversation, reaching across the aisle, if you will, you can change history. But it does require individual responsibility and action. One of the things that I enjoyed most about her presence was personal responsibility and the fact that we as individuals can make conscientious choices and have ownership to engage and make a difference. And that is, it's not about finger pointing, right? It's not about finger pointing. So I would invite you, as you approach whatever election it is that is coming upon your local government, try something a little bit different this time. And if you already do this, then kudos to you. Look at the issues, read up on the people, ask questions, learn something new. And, focus on not the divisiveness and going to the first source of news information, whether that's NBC or CNN or Fox or whatever it is. Do your own independent research. Get out there into the community. And even if you might be listening and going, Des, I am not one of those people. I'm not a political person. I don't want to be involved in that. You have to be involved. Doesn't mean you have to do what EL'ona is doing and run for office. And it's a civic responsibility that we have to participate in the world around us, because one of the things that was so powerful that she talked about is silence. Silence can be construed as agreement, not taking action. And that's a disservice, right? That's a disservice. Stand up for what you believe in. And at the very least, take a look at the things that you're passionate about and go out and contribute to that cause, whatever that may be. If it's homelessness, if it's the food shortage, if it's insurance, health, mental wellness, and any of the things that you look at and you go, I have a strong feeling about this. I want to contribute to making this better. Focus on the action, not just the complaint. It's so easy for us to gravitate. And trust me, I am sitting here guilty as charged. I'm not going to pretend that I don't have my moments where I get on a soapbox and I feel extremely strong about things like racism in our country, veterans' rights, women's rights. But just talking about it doesn't solve the issue. When you can contribute in some way, even if it's small, you're making a contribution. So just think about that. I highly encourage you to check out EL'ona's website, EL'onaKearney.com, to follow her journey and really see the inspiration that she's bringing in the world around her. I think it's awesome. Thank you for being here. Follow and subscribe if you have not already. Leave a comment, rate and review, and remember, you are your only limit, so take action today. Thanks for tuning in.